Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on digital impact assessment. We have a very exciting presentation for you with some live demos and great technologies, so we're very glad to have you here. Today's webinar is being hosted by the International Association for Impact Assessment, or IAIA. My name is Bridget John, and I'm being joined by my colleague, Lauralee Fortuny, who is working the tech wizardry in the back end. If you hear or see something today that you would like to tweet out or share on social media, please feel free to do that. You can see our Twitter handle there, as well as our IAIA webinar hashtag. Now, for those of you who might not be familiar, or maybe as a refresher for those of you who are, just wanted to mention a few things that are available to you through IAIA. Now, like today's webinar, we have a variety of webinars we've offered in the past, and they are available to everyone free and on demand in our archives. So for instance, we had one on ESG, one on COVID impacts. We've had some on health, resettlement, biodiversity, social impact assessment, so a variety of topics. And speaking of webinars, we will be having 3 of them coming up shortly. The first on March 16th is for members only. So if you are not an II member, you are going to want to join II so you can take advantage of that session on making the most of networking at a conference. There's also 2 other ones that are free to members and non-members alike, EU taxonomy and emerging technologies for biodiversity. So Lauralee will be posting into the chat the access points for you to join to become a member, or to also find out more information about those webinars and register for them. Now, we are very excited that our flagship event, our annual conference, will be held in person this year, the first time in 2 years, and we are so excited to see you all in Vancouver in May. It's almost like a family reunion, so you won't want to miss it. We also have in-person training sessions there at the conference as well, so training opportunities. And for the very first time this month, in fact, we will be offering online training courses, which is basically taking our in-person training and converting it to a virtual format. So there are a few of them available now, but there are more coming up. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. Another training opportunity we have is through our professional development program, which offers currently a foundations and impact assessment course. It's a self-paced 3-4 month long course. And what's unique about that is you get paired up with an individual mentor throughout. So that's pretty unique, and we love that program. We've gotten great feedback from it. And finally, if you haven't been to our website recently, you will want to go to the resources tab and check out the variety of free publications we have. Whether you want just some quick tips, our fast tips document highlights like 5 top things to know, 5 top things to do, or if you want something a little bit more in depth, like our best practice principles, guidelines, handbooks, you'll want to go to our website and check it out. Now, before we turn it over to the meat of this webinar, I just want to go over a little bit of housekeeping. At the top of your control panel for GoToWebinar, you will see a white arrow in either an orange or red box, and that will allow you to minimize your control panel or to pop it back out for you in case you need to move it so that you can see the presenters or their slides. We are indeed recording this, and it will be available on demand for you. You will receive a link to the recording within a day or 2. We will be taking questions. Feel free to type those in at any time throughout the presentation in the chat, the questions chat pane. We will be pausing at the end of each of the technology presentations so that if you do have a question related to that specific technology that we can help clarify at that moment, we want to make sure to address those right up front. And then, of course, we'll have a question and answer session with the entire panel at the end. But don't feel you have to wait. Type those questions in as they come to you. And the slides will be made available to you. You'll receive a link to that when you get the notification of the recording. And you can find them in the handouts pane of your control panel there. So there's 3 separate sets of slides, as well as the complete presenter bios. So we will now be able to turn it over to Josh Fothergill, who is going to take care of moderating the session and will be introducing each of our individual presenters. Josh is the founder of Fothergill Training and Consulting, and he received an innovation grant from IAIA to create this digital report, the State of Digital IA Practice, and launched it in 2021. And that's kind of the foundation for this webinar and what we expect our webinars to come on additional technologies. So keep an eye out for some more of those webinars. Josh is also created the award-winning EIA Quality Mark Scheme. And so with great pleasure, Josh, I'm going to turn it over to you. Take it away. Great webinar ahead.
Thank you very much, Bridget. Thank you for that introduction, and welcome everyone. Already over 140 of us on and more joining by the minute, so that's fantastic. So yes, today we're going to be talking about exploring 2 digital IA workspaces in relation to Envigo and the iReport. And you can see our panelists there who I will introduce. They'll talk about their systems and give us some demonstration. And then, as mentioned, we'll have a kind of Q&A panel discussion towards the end. So the webinar today is part of a wider series, and I'll all relate this back to the State of IA Practice Report. So later in the year, we hope to perhaps have more exploration of artificial intelligence and some of the other areas that were discussed within that report. But today, we're going to look at dive in to some of the case studies around these digital impact assessment workspaces. The report itself, just to give you an outline and a refresher, it was launched in December at a webinar for the IAIA. I think it was the 8th of December. You can access that online. And it was a kind of one-year review, really trying to explore how is digital technology and approaches being used within the impact assessment process, and how is that leading to changes within how we approach perhaps specific steps, maybe the screening process as to whether an assessment's required, or the monitoring and follow-up process, or actually the whole kind of assessment process, which is where we're going to be focusing today. So that report is available on the IAIA's website as well as Fothergill TC's website, so you can see the links there, and you can also access the kind of 1 hour 20 minute kind of recording of the launch webinar that goes into detail across that report from that link there. And as mentioned by Bridget, these slides are available in the handout section, so if you haven't had a chance to copy those down, please feel free to go in and access those. I did think it would be useful, though, to give you a quick refresher as to what we mean by digital impact assessments. Whilst there are some assessments going on of the implications of new technologies and artificial intelligence within the wider world, and that is an application of impact assessment, what we're talking about in terms of digital impact assessment is impact assessment as we know it and love it, environmental, social, health, and its uptake of digital approaches. So in terms of trying to define that within the State of Digital Impact Assessment Practice Report, what we found discussing with experts around the world, engaging with IAIA members and others through a survey, was that there's no adopted definition of what we mean by digital impact assessment. And in fact, there's lots of different views based on how people come to use digital technology within the process and their different perspectives and approaches and roles within the impact assessment process. So we decided to develop a definition that was broad within that report to try and kind of identify, I suppose, that broad horizon. So this isn't like a particular specialism or focus within impact assessment, but more a trend across the whole of practice. And there's the definition there: the use of advances in digital technologies and their applications in the pursuit of enabling more effective impact assessment practice. Now, in relation to that, we can see that this digital transformation of impact assessment, this uptake of those digital approaches and technologies, isn't just something that's happening in Europe, despite the fact that our 2 case studies today are from Europe. It's certainly easier to get speakers that are in the similar time zones, which is one of the reasons for today, as well as there being leading examples. But you can see across that map, wherever you are in the world, there are applications, many more than are necessarily on this diagram, but there are applications of digital approaches within impact assessment, within plan making, within project consenting, etc. So another thing we identified was, or what the report did, was explore 10 specific areas. So we identified these different themes within impact assessments, and we split these into 2 broad areas. So today we're going to focus on this digital impact assessment platforms and workspaces, and that falls under the area of digital transformation within the aspects of the impact assessment process. So you can see here kind of screening. How do we go about identifying whether projects require an assessment or not, or whether a plan might require assessment? There are various approaches now that are applying digital tools, technology mapping in order to assist that process. Within the actual impact assessment process, how you manage that, how you coordinate it, how you bring it together, how you engage people with it, there are these impact assessment platforms and workspaces. I'll talk about that more on the slide, and of course our speakers will speak about that today. In terms of stakeholder engagement, and particularly under COVID, although we were seeing it more so anyway, the uptake of digital spaces, virtual spaces, digital technologies, the use of augmented reality, etc., to aid stakeholders in the engagement process, and different mobile technologies is significantly increasing. But I think a very clear message that came out of the research there is that we need to also maintain the more direct stakeholder engagement and recognise different parties can access different approaches, and we make sure that we're not cutting anyone off. Web-based reporting and digital environmental impact statements is perhaps where people might be familiar with things, and certainly the iReports that Paul and Tom will talk about later kind of began as a concept around digitizing an environmental impact statement, but has certainly moved on from that now into this workspace area. And then the idea of kind of follow-up and monitoring, how might we use drones and different technology, hybrid realities, etc., in order to monitor things and bring information back to us and report more effectively. And also across different issues, how do we bring things together and identify trends and commonalities within multiple projects that we might be following up. The other area we identified was this area of kind of digital approaches and technology that are enabling progress. So this might be the advancement of kind of mass online systems for data storage, retrieval and access, and how they can be used to enhance multiple EIA processes or created for a dedicated process and allow very different users to input data. The uptake of various different digital data capture devices. I've already mentioned drones, but remote sensing from satellites, using audio and video data capture out in the field to identify species, possibly combining that with artificial intelligence to identify particular species by their sounds or their images, but also the uptake of artificial intelligence using natural language processing to review environmental statements and identify kind of key trends and linkages across documents. Virtual, augmented and mixed realities, the use of those technologies to help engage people. There was a great example in the UK, a project that didn't actually go ahead called the Garden Bridge, an idea of a new pedestrian bridge across the River Thames in London, but that was created as an entire virtual space that users could walk around with virtual reality goggles on and engage with. So lots of different technologies coming in there. And then equally what we're doing now, this online learning and capacity building from webinars where we just use digital technology to effectively all get together and have a presentation and a bit of a workshop, to actual e-learning, online conferencing and hybrid events as well. So those were the elements that the report looked into. The area we're focusing on today are these digital impact assessment platforms and workspaces. And what do I mean by this? Well, multiple different names given. impact assessment workspace, impact assessment platform or ecosystem. What this is developing a technological solution where impact assessors and IT or technology professionals get together and create dedicated digital systems that allow either the whole of the EIA or SEA process or ESIA process to be managed within that digital space and connections to be made between baseline data, impacts, findings, and the reporting process, or possibly a small part of the area and the process of impact assessment being brought together into a kind of digital interactive space. So an example of a part of that happening was in the UK under a project called Crossrail 2, a proposed major new underground rail crossing of London, and that created a digital scoping space for various different parties to go into a geographic system and comment and share and interact online over a number of months to feed into the scoping process. There are some much more substantive systems, and two of those are what we're going to look at today. So the first one will be Envigo, a globally accessible system created by a company called Eijssen Plus in Serbia. Gives a real comprehensive system for digital ESIA, and Nikola will speak about that shortly. And the second system we'll talk about is the iReport by Royal Haskoning, and you can see some examples of aspects of that report just on that image you can see on the screen there. So now is the time for me to be quiet and well, introduce firstly, before I be quiet, Nikola Nikacevic, who is the founder and CEO of Eijssen Plus, as well as being a full professor at the University of Belgrade. And Nico, hopefully you're there, and we'll start sharing your screen shortly. So over to you, Nico, Nikola, sorry, in relation to the Envigo system.
Thank you, Josh, very much, and thanks for IAIA for the opportunity to present Envigo to approaches and features to wider audience. I will now go directly in the presentation by sharing my screen. Can you see it now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay.
Oh, yep.
Okay, thanks. So over the last 9 years, we have set a number of objectives for Envigo and gradually tried to find optimal solutions. The first and main objective was to place the EIA knowledge and practice at the center and keep it there by offering expert data sets and methods collected from the relevant literature and practice. The imperative was to substantially support the work and virtual collaboration of EIA practitioners. And then from the beginning, it was clear that we need to develop a custom-made platform using advanced open source software operating on the cloud. Our ambition was to encompass the whole IA process for developments from all industry sectors. And this is a continuous process of updating and fine-tuning data from various sources and also integrating them with different digital tools. Importantly, the goal was to develop a platform that would be available for many different requirements at the various levels. So we all know how impact assessments are versatile, and also how different requirements coming from different international positions, and also other requirements coming from companies and projects and so on. So for this, we needed to exploit system theory and engineering for design, dynamic and modular structures and relations. On the other hand, our crucial goal was to design an application that will be comprehensible and easy to use, even for the basic software users, as well as for the EIA juniors. Therefore, we have gradually enhanced and simplified user experience and interface considering users' feedback. Finally, the ambition is to engage all stakeholders directly through the platform and to enable a gradual transformation towards fully digital EIA. And their collaboration with different stakeholders early in the design and development process was very important for us. Today, I will present the resulting digital solutions in three main sections, starting from the most relevant part. The whole platform is divided into elements. We call them modules. And here you may see the ones responsible for identifying, assessing, and mitigating environmental and social impacts. Those are Workspace, in which users access modules and track workflow and also create study versions. Then checklists are used for input data, editing and selections, while matrices connect impact factors and attributes. Finally, the processors are used to assess impact significance and to define mitigation measures. So I will go through all of them and demonstrate these modules and features in the next slides with short videos. Central point for the practitioners is the Workspace. It is a suite of modules representing an impact assessment workflow. As you may see, the workflow consists of several generic modules that are repeated and connected. They're horizontally grouped in processing, presenting, and reporting sections, and vertically divided into screening, scoping, and assessing stages. So the work can be monitored with the colored boxes representing currently active modules. Overall, this approach enables tailoring the predefined data to each IA study. It also offers study versioning and reassessment through the whole project cycle. Furthermore, the modules can be rearranged for customization to specific needs, as well as to international procedures, different ones. Impact identification starts with checklists offering predefined activities, aspects, receptors relevant for a project industry sector. Now we are displaying activities for a demo mining project with grouped structures and features for easy navigation. As shown here, practitioner can insert new activity, for instance, for site preparation. Also, it can move it to reorder up, and it can also turn the numeration of the whole list on or off. This general checklist module is also used for other data inputs like alternatives, mitigation measures, project phases, stakeholders, and so on. Apparently, as you may see here, users can have a full flexibility to edit the default phrase by adding more specific data. Further, they could add comments and justifications. As you may see, whole paragraphs could be added if needed. So the final list can be neatly presented in tables or further processed. Inputs selected in matrices and edited in checklists are transferred to matrices. And here users cross-connect activities, aspects, receptors, merging elements that are relevant for one input. Now you can see a matrix connecting impact sources or causes with receptors that are above. Sources are defined in previous matrix, combining activities and aspects. You may see expand and collapse options that help for the better experience and overview and better user experience. The final output of the cross-connect matrices are impact phrases that you may see here now, generated by the system based on stepwise selections. The scoping completes with the tagging matrix in which key characteristics and attributes are selected for each impact, as you may see here. Here, users define whether impact is positive or negative, direct, induced, routine, accidental. They also select alternatives to evaluate in more detail development phases and so on. Subsequently, each impact is assessed and elaborated individually based on its characteristics. Identified impacts are divided into routine, accident, cumulative that you see now, and ecosystem services, and evaluated separately. In this table, you may see a list of routine impacts and their main properties defined previously. Impact significance you may see now for all development phases obtained by some method. Envigo offers several multi-criteria evaluation methods for different impact characteristics. You may see now one of the scoring methods of Envigo, but also users, experts can also add their or requested methods. Importantly, project alternatives can be assessed in detail and compared efficiently with an aid of digital system. So here you may see how one can compare several alternatives for a particular impact and see the final scores. Mitigation measures and monitoring plans are also recommended for each impact. The second part of this demo is dedicated to presentations, reporting, and participating. So also for stakeholders engagement and interaction between all parties involved in the process. So you may see the list of corresponding Envigo modules, which I will explain in next slides. Presentation module includes visualization and analysis tools in which assessment results are collected and then sorted and presented in desired ways. There are a number of tables, charts, then, and also statistical data that can be generated and stored in a library now on the right side shown, available for reporting. Toolbars and menus are easy to use, while visualization elements are fully interactive and dynamic. Digital reports are key modules for EIA statements writing and reviewing. Contributors and reviewers can easily navigate through complex reports, as you may see here now, using two navigation bars. The top one now showing switching between the chapters, and the left-hand side bar for content exploration and reordering also. Additional expand and collapse options also facilitate the reading. There are many capabilities for report rich text writing and formatting, as you may see now. Users, so the experts, consultants, can add different contents like images, tables, and they could create also tables, but also include some images from GIS or other sources. Now you see uploading one image, and also editing like cropping and other features that are allowed there. Also, now we will show the moving, so reordering, for instance, easy reordering through the chapter. All these editing actions are reserved for assessors and proponents, but not for the public and authorities. We also have a short and summary reports that have the same structure and features, but are more visually attractive. study readers and reviewers can directly engage by providing comments, questions, or marks to reports using this right sidebar. So there are a number of options for each commenting and interactions. For instance, you saw the threads next to the highlighted text, also call outs of the other participants. Then two comments can be merged by linking as shown here. Also later on they could be, for instance, edited or deleted. And finally, they could be resolved at the end. Furthermore, there are some other features like filtering of the comments and also presenting a history which gives a better overview of the previously inserted comments. So overall, this gives a good opportunity for all stakeholders, aside authorities and others, to participate in a digital format. State-of-the-art technologies are used for collection of all inserted data or created data, and then page formatting and printing out in well-structured PDF reports. Before generating those reports, users can change the order of the reports, so exclude some of the chapters and reorder them, which gives additional flexibility. So PDFs are alternative options, providing opportunity for traditional way of reviewing IA studies. In the third part, I will present modules for process management, performance analysis, and decision making. These important modules are usually dashboards and panels, which are used for such purposes, and I will shortly present them in next slides. Study dashboard lists IA projects displaying important information and providing links to the workspace you see previously and review panel. Also have many options for easy navigations, like including or excluding columns or filtering the list of a project that could be very long. Imagine for one country that could be filtered by this filter. Now in extended mode, you may see more details about development and assessment. And overall, this module allows for efficient performance analysis and comparison between studies. Each study has a review panel, which is a central point for approval process and communication between stakeholders. Here, stakeholders can approach all submitted digital reports, as well as PDF reports, and also there are other modules for public consultations, summarized public comments, approved summaries, questionnaires, and so on. Review panel also has a timeline with events and dates for each stage of the procedure. So past or future events can be inserted through this form that you see now, and then they're displayed in a timeline shown now. Also, all events can be shown here. Importantly, all previous versions are saved, for example, before and after revision, and can be restored if needed for a comparison. In study registration process, user-friendly input forms are used for inserting information about study, for instance, study type, then study name, then institution for submission, and so on. Then some information about development and locations. And for the efficient workflow, registration forms are grouped into steps presented in a navigation panel that you may see now. The forms are also used for defining user and organization details, timelines, and so on. Importantly, they are dynamic and can be adapted for specific requirements. Organization dashboard presents the overview of a company data as well as the list of staff as shown in this illustrative example. It has similar features like a studies dashboard as shown now, and this is now the expanded view for more details, and this dashboard lays a ground for efficient management and analysis of resources, engagement, and performance. So to wrap up, there are many possibilities for customization and adaptation of Envigo platform, responding to different needs at several levels, from particular project location and study, then to clients' preferences, up to national legislation and procedural requirements. I hope I showed that Envigo is highly modular, dynamic, adaptable, and scalable. So many customization options can be achieved by the system administration with no extensive and long programming processes. Here's the list of important customization options. Some of them I have already explained previously, and so I will not go into details now, but if one wants to find out more, we could discuss it later on. As for the future plan, in forthcoming period, we plan to extend Envigo to ESG due diligence by using existing modules and features with new data and methods. And this will allow full integration with the impact assessment. Also, we are considering adaptation for similar IA processes as a standalone applications, such as cumulative impact assessment, ecosystem services, and so on. Some of them are now embedded in our ESAI platform. Important next step is effective integration with compatible software solutions like GIS, ESH management and monitoring and other. Saying that, I mean in deep integration with the data and through APIs. Further in future, we are looking into utilization of artificial intelligence algorithms for impact identification and assessment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nikola. Fantastic presentation and a really incredible system there, and also incredible to get us through in the time scale that you had as well. So thank you very much for that. We have had just a couple of technical questions, one of which does kind of link into something that was just on your previous slides, which is about multiple languages. Obviously, the one you've demonstrated today is in English, but is the platform available in other languages apart from English?
Thanks for the question. Not at the moment, but we are designing it and developing it to be multilingual. So this is also technical thing to enable such multilingual approach. But then later, obviously, it needs to be translated in other languages, which is for the UI and other elements is not so, let's say, tedious, but to transfer of all data sets and databases is a little bit more challenging in time. But also, as shown, a lot of things can be added by users, so they could produce actually such content where needed.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And another question that came on is the platform available to use both on and offline?
No, it's exclusively online platform. So we do not have options. And when we started, as I said at the beginning, we decided to go online and to go on cloud. And there are options to set up a local network. So that will be that could be so local servers, for instance, the local network. So it would work like that, but it's on a network.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned data sets within it, and obviously there's kind of pre-populated, or you have information around different types of aspects, impacts, those kind of things. But in terms of, I suppose, data sets like GIS data sets or information about designated sites or those kind of things, is that something that comes preloaded into the system, or given the fact that that's obviously, you know, where in the globe are you? Presumably, is that something that you have to bring as a client and insert in?
Yes, that's a good question. So obviously we are considering GIS from the beginning, but there is a trick there because a lot of solutions exist now in the market, for instance, for GIS, and particular, let's say, clients or companies or organizations or authorities use different solutions. And that is why we didn't want to start integrated with one and then also having like difficulties and time challenges to integrate with the other. So we left it as a customization option depending on what the clients or organizations or national level organizations would like to use. Maybe also enabling more. But the idea, now you could insert the map that is created in GIS. And so we're not going to provide, let's say, features for generating GIS maps and data, but we will export and then import through APIs data in order to be able to create some tables, not just images, and maybe process it later on in the next phases of the impact assessment.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot out there, and just using my basic computer of deciding to update Microsoft Office and breaking something else, I can fully understand why you didn't try and kind of go with one and link together. That's fantastic. We don't have any more technical questions at the moment. Oh, hang on, sorry, one's just come in. So let's have a look. In terms of, I suppose, confidentiality, in terms of kind of specific client data confidentiality and that kind of thing, obviously you showed us a platform there, and this is just a demonstration model you're showing us. So, you know, it just had kind of examples of prospective projects or whatever there. But presumably there is kind of some client confidentiality management in the online world and that kind of thing. Could you explain that a little more?
Sure. That's a very important question raised by many, obviously, clients. And so there are several layers for this. The first one, like the major security of data, is ensured surely with our server providers, and that's Amazon. So they take care about data also, and or some bridges. But also we are developing under the standards for data security and data protection. So we are also making sure that they are protected. That's on a high level. On a level of showing and exposing or disclosing data throughout the platform, we also do a very careful permission system. So this is, I mentioned throughout the presentation, throughout the webinar, I mentioned that to some parts allowed for the experts, for instance, Workspace and writing reports, selecting and scoring and so on. So this is only available for the practitioners and for the companies, proponents or consultants, whether this stakeholder engagement and authorities evaluation can be done through other parts, and also after the ones that are producing the material allow or submit to public and to authorities. So they're split and divided with the permissions.
Thank you. That's fantastic. Really good to have that discussion. We'll bring you back in when we go to the panel discussion later. So thank you very much for now. We're now going to move on to Paul Eijssen, who is a strategic consultant at Royal Haskoning DHV. He's got over 30 years professional experience in impact assessments and has a real strong focus on innovation. And if any of you have been to any of the IA international conferences, really since, well, for the last 6 or 7 years, you may well have bumped into Paul if you are interested in this area and been looking into this area. So hopefully Paul will come on screen shortly. Fantastic. There's his presentation. So Paul, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I shall hand over to you, Paul, and look forward to hearing about the iReport.
Thanks, Josh, and thanks IA for this opportunity to share our experiences with Digital IA in recent years in this webinar. The focus in this webinar is mainly about where we currently stand in applying digital environmental impact assessment. But before I say what we want to discuss in the next 25 minutes, I would like to briefly introduce myself and Tom Moekotte. Tom will do the second part of this presentation, and Tom is the product owner of our digital reporting and participation tool. This means that he is strongly involved in the use of the tool, but also in its further development, and he also provides trainings. In addition to his role as product owner, Tom is a cybersecurity advisor. My name is Paul Eijssen, and I'm a strategic consultant for impact assessment. From that role, I started developing the EIA, the Digital EIA, and I'm the business owner of what we call iReport within Royal Haskoning DHV. In addition, I'm involved in information management within RHDHV. What are we going to show you? We start briefly with the reason why we started with digital impact assessment. I will then show 2 examples where this has been applied in practice in formal proceedings. For the translation to your own practice, we show what is possible in a demo environment, especially with some examples of the power of visualization in complex studies such as EIA. We regularly give webinars for organizations, and of course, we also get a lot of questions about how something like this is set up, and therefore we end with a first impression of the back end of this platform, and that hopefully within 25 minutes. The examples we show are based on the platform we use as RHDHV in terms of functionality. Similar platforms are also developed by other companies. RHDHV has been developing since 2015, and we now have several projects in progress. What we show can also be used by other companies. With this introduction, let's get started. Was environmental impact assessment always a full-fledged aid to decision making? I think sometimes yes, sometimes less, and sometimes not. And that can be for a variety of reasons. One of these is the accessibility of sometimes complex information, or of less complex information made complex by extensive text and huge files of papers. Many a discussion has taken place over the last decades to improve this. Back to basics, better scoping, proportionate EIA, but also the request to use a lot more visual information to keep things understandable and appealing. In my opinion, thick reports are hardly read by decision makers, and then one has to rely on the summary and the input for specialists for the decision making. Citizens and other stakeholders are difficult to involve or lose trust due to information that is difficult to access. That can be done differently. How many possibilities do all these digital developments offer for EIA? I think a lot. The same text can be presented in layers. Only the specialists go a layer deeper. But the common thread of the story remains easy for the reader to follow. That was not only our conclusion based on a pilot project that we did together with the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management in the Netherlands, but it was also the conclusion of the Independent Dutch Commission for EIA, the NCEA, which we had asked for formal advice regarding the pilot. What also helps is to replace a lot of text with visual information. Interactive where possible and relevant. Think of 2D and 3D GIS, 3D models or interactive tables, dynamic graphs, video, 360-degree images. All these techniques exist, are fairly easy to apply, and can make the digital EIA much more attractive. A bit more about this will be shown by Tom in a minute. At the IAI conference in 2015 in Florence with the Digital Era as theme, the EIA community was still at the start of development. Now projects have started digitally and the parties involved are starting to see the advantage and get used to the idea. Also outside the Netherlands, by the way, and with initiatives from various companies and organizations. And from a digital report, it goes to a digital process in which the digital information grows with the project, and where digital participation not only allows for information, but also for consultation, up to virtual consultation rooms, as you can see in this small video. We started in 2015 with a first pilot with a digital report. Nowadays, it is no longer just a digital and interactive report. Our platform can be used as your project website with a homepage, with information about your project, about your planning, etc. You can present multiple interactive publications, including PDF based on the online content, with a wide range of visualizations, visualization options, and even scripts. So it's versatile, and it includes the ability to not only inform, but also consult your stakeholders, which we will show in a moment. It is quick and easy to set up and meets legal requirements such as web accessibility and privacy. And what new possibilities will arise? Conduct a sensitivity analysis yourself on alternatives in a report. Real-time information, augmented reality, create support via social media, listen to the effect of noise-reducing measures. Those techniques are already there. Integration is often possible and sometimes are already underway. The possibilities are considerable and developments are going fast. And how much more fun it is to watch an animation or video instead of 500 pages of text and quickly grasp the essence of the message. I would like to briefly show you two examples, an SEA of the National Aviation Policy Memorandum and an EIA of a dike improvement project. Both examples from the Netherlands, but there are many examples from all parts of the world, such as a water supply project in South Africa or a coastal protection project in the Philippines. Let's start with the SEA project. What you see is the homepage of a project, and if you scroll down, you will find information about the project. And in this case, also possibilities to go directly to certain information via interactive visuals. A slider with pictures of all the airports in the Netherlands. And at the bottom of the page is a footer with information that is visible on all pages. At the top of the page is a menu to navigate to different reports. This project has 4 different publications, and let's have a look at the non-technical summary. Each chapter can be assessed via the navigation on the left. And here you can see the comparison table for the different alternatives. Icons indicate the expected effects for each of the criteria. By hovering over, you can quickly see what that means per criteria. A final point that I want to show in this example is that a PDF of each report has been created of this digital content, in which the interactive content has been handled in a smart way. In this way, the information can be archived for a longer period of time without having to host the information for years. A second example is about an EIA for a dike improvement. Here again, a homepage with information about the project. This homepage also has an interactive overview map of the project, and of course the footer at the bottom of the page again. In addition to the EIA, this project has also a number of permit applications as interactive documents. Visual means were again used in the EIA, such as the use of animations to explain, in this case, the fail mechanisms of a dike, as you can see in this small video. This EIA includes also a map atlas in which the reader can zoom in and switch map layers on and off. And yeah, although there are many more, these two examples show how in the past 2 years, impact statements have already been brought into proceedings in the Netherlands in digital interactive form. How such a thing can be done in the most attractive way is further shown by Tom. And that means, Josh, that if there are any questions, I can try to answer them. Otherwise, we can switch over to Tom.
Yes, certainly. Well, thank you very much, Paul. Just a couple have come in. One of them may well be covered by what Paul is going to present, but as with the I suppose the question on Envigo, the two examples you showed there are presented in Dutch. Is the system kind of available in other languages? Has it been applied in English and other languages?
Yeah, well, indeed, Tom can and will show a bit how that works. In fact, we work, well, people can work in the way they are used to work to create a document. And that means that they can start working in Word, for instance. That means that if you create your document in English, you get it in English. If you you create it in whatever language, that is how it works. So the only thing maybe we can look into, if we are able maybe in time to see if we can have it online in multiple languages, but that is not available yet. As long as we don't upload the document in both languages. So it is possible, but we have to do it in different language. So it is possible. It depends on in what language you want to create your report.
Fantastic. And again, this might be one more for what Tom's going to show us, but you were showing us some of the reports and that kind of thing and how to interact with them. But is it possible for users, stakeholders, the public to comment on those reports and do that kind of thing?
That is possible, and I'm not sure if Tom has time enough to show that, but there is a on the front end of the project. So on the website, on the front end of the website, there is an option. Depending on the access rights, if I tell it correctly, Tom, depending on the access right, that people can put comments on the front end of the document. In the back end, we have the same system. So in the back end, people, the team that is working on the document can comment and have actions for team members. But on the front end, it's also possible, for instance, for the competent authority to come up with comments on what they see before they publish.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Fantastic, thank you very much for that. So this is kind of the halfway point of Haskoning's presentation. We're now going to look into, I suppose, a bit more of the functionality and have a play with it. So over to Tom, who is an internal process advisor at Haskoning, but I think more importantly is, I believe, the product lead for iReport and that side of things. So over to you, Tom. I'll let you do your thing.
Yes, thank you, Josh. And right before I start sharing my screen, my presentation will have two kind of parts. First, I will briefly look with you through the front end of an iReport to highlight some more visuals that you can use. If I don't forget, I will also demonstrate that comment feature that Paul briefly mentioned. And to quickly tie into that last question, not the last, but the single last question about the language, the back end currently is fully in Dutch and English available. The front end has, I think, in total 10 languages available when it comes to the response of the website. So when you hover on a button, it tells you click to continue in English, but if your iReport is set to Hindi, it will say it in the Hindi language. So actually the response of the website, we can already make it into 10 types of languages. The content, you can always go any language you wish to do so. Let's get my screen on. And it should be sharing by now. Just quickly check in with my, yeah, I see the right screen over there. As Paul mentioned, and also was mentioned previously by Josh, in one of the documents in the handout called the State of Digital IA, a little piece of text is about our iReport, and actually those 6 recommendations that Paul mentioned by the NCEA are over there. And I want to tie into 4 of those recommendations because they were from a technical side and we tailored them into the new iReport. So that will be alongside my story. What you see on the screen now is our demo environment. I use this one because I know it the best, and we try to put everything in there to demonstrate also for wider audiences. First of all, what I would like to show you is if I would go to this publication section and would go one level deeper, is that we have a fully functioning 3D GIS map that's being loaded over here. This one is from an original EIA study for a paint factory that was redesigning the interior, and they had to do a re-application for the permit because they were shuffling kind of the liquids from room to room. And what is nice is that if you would click on any of these elements, you get the real data. So it's not just a static visual, it actually shows you the data. And this is actually one of the moments in my presentation where I want to make a bridge to those recommendations, because the NCEA told us, how do you make sure it's accessible from the web accessibility guidelines point of view? And what we have enabled is that every element that is highly interactive can be accompanied by this little accessibility icon, and clicking on such an icon will bring you to a more alternative, to an alternative version of the same information. And now the same information is presented in a table, and if I have not the dexterity to operate a 3D model, or I have to rely on a reading machine in my browser, I can get the same information as the visual was showing me. That's one of the 4 things that I wanted to highlight. Another thing that we have enabled in our report is not only the spatial 3D, but also the more engineering 3D. And in this model, we have a Revit model from the Autodesk suite, and it's an office building. And what is nice also about this one is that it is more than just the visual. If I would click on any of those elements, the real data that was on this model is at least accessible and findable also in the iReport. So once again, a strong connection between the engineering world, the design world, what is going to be happening over there, and the data that's right behind it. So those are also kind of connected. I'm going to make the little bridge here to the comment version that was mentioned. No, I'm not going to do it. I'll wait a little bit longer. First of all, I want to show you also the e-participation chapter. In this page, we have added a couple of features and functionalities that are according to our iReport in the e-participation domain, where you, as a writer of a report, have the opportunity to connect with the reader of your report. What we have enabled is, for example, timelines in which you can highlight critical events in your process, or maybe look back in time to demonstrate what has been done before. Options to ask basic polls, including pictures. Is it of value? Yes, of course this is of value. And in that sense, your readers can directly respond to the content you're offering them. Well, this is a result of the data. You can have open feedback questions, so people can share their opinions. Good idea. I'll save it there. And last but not least, we have the option to place your thoughts on a map. And that's like really nice, because often our EIAs have a very strong component of spatial, like where is it going to happen? How does it affect me? And for example, if I would zoom in on this little town, it's actually where I was born, and I would click somewhere in this park, I would get a pop-up, in this case with a questionnaire asking my name. It's Tom. I have a idea, and maybe please put a playground here. Important, I have to comply with our privacy statement because I'm leaving personal data behind. So this GDPR check is also strong in those eParticipation modules. Let's save it here. And the question is now stored in the backend of the iReport so the team can access it and do something with the data we're leaving behind. Last but not least, in this eParticipation flow, Paul also showed it shortly in a video format, is such a consultation room. In this case, it's a smaller version, but it could be a full screen wide version as well. The next thing I want to show you is the third point of the NCEA. The second one was the stakeholder management. The third one has to do with make sure everything is easy searchable, because lengthy documents are already hard to find through, but a website can be just as complex. And we have made sure that there's a very elaborate search function that can find every page in your report, but it also offers these really nice and neat filters. I always joke in the Netherlands, it's the Zalando filters from like a famous shopping website. Nowadays, people are getting more and more into, I want to filter first and then read my results. I don't want to look for it. I want to filter and then read. So we are tying into that the digital trend in our reports to make also that flow for our readers possible in the iReport. So that is what you see over here. Okay, let's move on to my second part. Is it easy to do all of this in an iReport? How easy is it to make changes? For that, I switch from browser tab to browser tab, and now I'm on the same iReport, but this little icon here tells me I am logged in to make changes. And now I can demonstrate the feature mentioned before. Let's assume I, as a reader, want to leave a comment on this specific page. I could open up this little drop down, go into comment mode. I see all these boxes. They allow me to click on anything. Let's click on this little section over here and leave a comment. Oh, I did this one before. There's a typo. There's still a typo. Please fix. And I leave this comment for Paul Eijssen. And he will now get a notification by email like, hey, there's some work for you to do in this specific chapter. Let's pause for now and let's go to the backend to demonstrate actually an uploading process. Because I want to add a new part to this iReport, a new chapter, a new topic. I clicked on that button, so now I'm in like the technical backend of the iReport. I have prepared a document that I will want to upload. I will show it very briefly. And it's just a Word file, because we noticed that our colleagues and actually everyone likes to work in Word and Excel. They do want to learn new tools, but in the end, everyone falls back to those core systems to collect your information and your data. So we also tied that into our report, a strong connection between automating Word files. The document contains pictures, comments, there is tables, there are hyperlinks, all fine. You can all import those and they will be stored appropriately in the iReport site. So let's have a look how that goes. This document, 5 chapters, very small. You can have 1000 pages. It doesn't matter for the system. Let's move back to my browser. Let's switch my area of work to IA webinar. Let's go to articles, and please don't memorize these steps. It's just to show you how easy it is. Import a Word file. Yeah, there it is, the first stage. Let's drag and drop my Word file right into my screen. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor dragging it, but there it goes. It's a 5-step program, but luckily by default, everything is set right. So I can just smoothly click next, 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 and everything will be uploaded according to what I'm expecting. Save it here. And this typically takes 20-25 seconds to upload an entire, well, if it's really big, it takes slightly longer, but it takes, well, this was less than 20 seconds to put those 5 chapters over here. First things first, I want to see what I have. Let's go configuration, website content, create a new page, a new section in my iReport that I want to present to you. Let's call it IA webinar. Let's say it's a menu, and I need to have this document that I just uploaded. Save. The page exists. It needs to be accessible in that top white bar with the blue buttons. Let's connect it to the publication one. Pencil, IA webinar, save, and save. Nice thing is, if I now reload the website, and it should be refreshed here, publication now has a drop down. If I click IA webinar, I already have that. Oh, I'm still in the feedback modus. I already have those 5 chapters live and online. So in 2-3 minutes, an original static Word file is already converted to a fully working website. But let's get into these details and see if we can make some minor changes to the content as well. I go back to this backend. And in this case, I'm going to do two small changes to this report. The first one is in my first chapter, Aviation Consultancy. And in this page, I have two pictures that would fit exactly on top of each other. And I want to make that into a nice slider feature. On the right, you see a long list of possibilities, too much to discuss today, but as you can see, there is a lot. Let's look it up. Where is my image comparison? There it is, compare images. Let's leave it there. Let's remove the placeholders. We don't need them for now. And drag and drop the images in there. And as you can see, the system is quite easy to understand, logic to do, and it follows a very plain and basic follow through of your actions. On the workflow side, I can open up this comment over here. I can say we have done this, it's ready to go. And good to see here is this approval workflow. You can say only Paul is the person who can approve this publication, and only Niels is allowed to actually publish it to the client. So quality control and keeping track of your publication stages and levels is fully embedded on like the lowest level in iReport. Let's save it. Let's also look at my second one, because I wanted to do two of them, which is the airport IT chapter. I have some comments to resolve. Let's look at this one. Add a Autodesk model. Now, we can do that by simply drag and dropping an Autodesk block from the right into the model or into the article, open it up with a pencil, and then when I'm here, I can say show my models, and I can select, I already uploaded it this morning, an office building to this report, to this page. So now also this one is here. Remember that little story I told about the accessibility of elements? If I think this one is difficult to grasp, I can switch it to informative and can fill out these blanks to make sure that there is an accompanying article to serve this specific visual. So also that trail and those activities are very close together in the backend of an iReport. Let's save this one here. Last but not least, you can wrap up an entire iReport to a PDF, but of course these kind of models, maybe it's possible to get them in the PDF, but I think that's too heavy for a PDF and it will quickly go out of hand. What we have in iReport is that for each individual block, you can determine whether it should be inside the channel or outside the channel. So for Autodesk, I tell him, please hide this model in the PDF, so it will not be pushed to the export. On the other hand, my text below says, in our online iReport, an Autodesk model is presented here. Follow this hyperlink to view the model. I can open up this paragraph and say, okay, but you are not meant to be visible on the computer. You're not meant to be visible on my tablets. And also people who use a mobile phone should not see the text. Only my PDF is going to tell this message. And using those channels in a smart way, you can make sure that on every direction people access your report, they can get the information that you want to tell them and that you want to show them in that specific device. Okay, let's save this one. Let's have a very quick look at the front end. So we have a feedback loop completed on what we changed. We made this slider available here. And on the airport IT chapter, I have incorporated this 3D model, again, of the same building, but as you can see, it works nice and smoothly. And then my last chapter is export this to a PDF. I go back to this backend. I go to my reports. There's already one styled at the start as soon as we start with a new import. Let's open it over here to see what kind of edit functions you have. For now, I want to keep it simple. Let's open this first one. As an image, I want to have this airplane. And as my second logo, I want to have the IA logo. Save it here, save it there. Click the export button, export to PDF. And now this is loading. And it's here. Open this PDF. And as you can see, we have now a fully styled PDF with the pictures, with the logos. And if I would go through these chapters, the same 5 are there, clickable. This one, the pictures are skipped because they're in a highly interactive model. And over here, we have this little text that tells you, please go to that iReport because you miss valuable information. And that is actually my basic demo of the backend. I hope to show you in 10 minutes how a old-fashioned Word document gets imported, published, edited, converted to PDF, and can now be shown to all your stakeholders, whilst having all those comment options and workflows and quality control points. Back to you, Josh. And are there any questions? Please put them in the chat right now so we can answer them.
Thank you very much, Tom. Yeah, I think you answered some questions that came up about kind of where the origin of 3D engineering and those kind of drawings come up as your demonstration went on. So Alicia says, thank you for that. There was a question, someone indicating it looks really, really useful in terms of that integration of MS Word and that kind of thing, and the carryover of comments. Just wondering, something I'm sure many consultants are very used to, track changes all over their documents and those kind of thing. How does that work when it's uploaded? Does it retain those, or does it deal with those, or does it lose them? Do they need to be resolved beforehand, I suppose, is what I'm asking.
I would not recommend importing it with track changes, but the nice thing about the iReport is that you can synchronize your document as many times as you want. So let's assume you are working with a team of 5 and you just tell your team, hey guys, on Friday, and girls, on Friday I will import the document, whatever is ready we will see, but please continue working. And you can do your importing, and the next week you do it over and you get a fully synchronization option with comparisons and updated screens, and it stores all those versions also online. So you can always go back in time and see, hey, I see that Josh made a change 5 days ago. He changed this word to that word. Okay, that's good. Or he closed that comment, or he resynchronized an Excel sheet with the latest data on our sensitivity analyses, for example.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think given the time, what I'll do now is ask Paul and Nikola to come back in, if that's okay, because we have a range of questions that have come in across both presentations that I've been looking to try and save up and kind of link into some combined kind of areas for discussion. So the first one, I guess, if we come to you, Nikola, first, and then across to either Tom or Paul as you feel appropriate. So these are, I suppose, again, a little bit more technical questions, but relevant to both platforms. So what is needed to kind of access the platform, I guess, really from a kind of stakeholder perspective? So a number of questions kind of coming in and saying, oh, this looks very great on, you know, a European level or that kind of thing. But, you know, what's the kind of basic needs if you're a stakeholder, a member of the public who's wanting to access this? I guess in terms of tools and accessibility, but also for some of those things like virtual rooms or those kind of things, kind of network speed and connection. So Nikola, if you're happy to answer from that perspective, and then we'll go across.
Thank you. So the public participants can join through the registration process if they want to be under their name. Or they can be guests, so anonymously approaching the system. So it is very simple. Actually, you just go to the login page and select whether you want to register only with the name, or go as a guest anonymously, and then providing the data throughout it. I mean, comments and also questions and the other stuff. So it's rather easy, I would say.
So it's really a case of having web access, and then you just navigate to a page and on you go.
Yes, and in terms of requirements for the web access, I think it's only browser and broadband, obviously, but I think even the slower internet connection could give an opportunity to go through and to read, because it's not actually reading and providing comments. It's not actually so demanding in terms of the power, computational power behind on the browser.
Thank you. Tom or Paul, from in terms of access?
Well, in our case, also a web browser is needed. In fact, for everyone to read the published document, but we have the opportunity to also publish behind login credentials. So if there is a client who only wants to show it to a smaller group of people, sometimes, for instance, when they are not completely ready for full publication or whatever, we can provide login credentials, then people can log in. And in also, so it's you only need a browser, especially when you have GIS maps or other visuals that can sometimes take maybe 1 or 2 seconds to open it. But maybe Tom, you can add a little bit about that on the technical side.
Yeah, so on the side of authenticating our users, we can either go fully public, we can go partly public, and we have the option to invite people either on their email addresses or even connect entire companies. So they're, to not make it too technical, so that their Active Directory of users is granted permission to enter because they work for that specific company. So you can connect kind of a company to an iReport. When it comes to the authorization level, so what can they see, what can they do? It is very tailored. You can make it specific to a single page. Like this page is only for the senior staff of the company, so they can preview it already. But the next page is for all staff, so they can read maybe the policy and the procedures that we have written on it. So both on authentication and authorization, it is very, very scalable and dynamic.
Okay, thank you very much for those answers. I'm going to move us on to a different area now, I guess in relation to quite a lot of interest in the product, and Lucy asked a question kind of related to this in terms of I suppose piloting to properly use it, but a number of questions came in about, I suppose, kind of skills needs. So, you know, you guys obviously know how to use them. You're doing a short demo and we're going through things quite quickly. What kind of training is there needed, or is there training needed to use these, and is that support available? And what kind of piloting processes are available to people to try out those things? Maybe if we start with Paul this time, and then come across to Nikola, if that's okay.
Yeah, I can. Let's use my own company as an example. What we have done over the last couple of years, I think we have about 1,000 of my colleagues in a 1-hour introductory webinar. And those people who said, well, for my project, I want to really use it. They don't have to come to a small team who are helping them, but then Tom gives trainings. That's most of the time, I think, a 6 to 8 hour training, Tom, if I'm correct. And then people are really ready to go. So they can create what Tom showed in 10 minutes. They are able to create a complete full report, including the PDF, including the GIS maps, etc., to embed that in the system with one training of about 6 hours.
And good to add to that is maybe that we see that our domain experts, we want to keep them focusing on being the expert on their domains and not making them feel responsible for designing the entire report. So we see actually that more young professionals in our company and digital savvy people, they want to know how to build those reports, whereas the domain experts, they want to write in Excel and in Word the actual knowledge. So we can separate the knowledge gathering from the building and not burden the domain experts with all the technical things of an iReport. So that's also in the design of the system.
Thank you. And Nikola, on your side, the piloting, training, that kind of support?
So to continue a little bit on Tom's remark, so we are trying, as hopefully I have shown, to build up actually the knowledge within and expert domain knowledge, and then also to produce reports and stakeholder engagement and the other features for decision making and so on. So I think it depends on the domain, to go back on the question. So for instance, experts needs a little bit more time to go into whole how to produce, how to use data sets combined and everything else methods. Whether for the ones who create reports or even comment the ones, it is really quite easy and accessible, I think, for juniors and for maybe for the youngers even more. What I wanted to also to mention is that we have how to use manuals, and they are not like a huge book. They are like embedded throughout the pages, so you can click on how to use at the bottom, and then it turns out in a familiar user experience that is for the reports writing. You have the explanations about the module or the part where you currently are. You can also print out in PDF. So this is very handy. And also on the other hand, we have trainings, and we go into 2 or 3 sessions of couple of 2 hours, let's say 2 to 3 hours. So again, let's say one work day or a little bit more, split it in several sessions would be good enough for enrolling and working into the platform. And it's for free.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add a little bit, Josh? Because
sure.
one of the things, not from the colleagues that ask us how it works, but in terms of the digital transition, I think we try to emphasize that people should work more and more with visual information to make that information much more accessible and interesting for the audience. So there is a lot of work to do in that part, because we work with Word, for instance, and people are trying just start typing, and then the real power of digital is not coming to a full, how do you say that, blooming or something like that? Yeah. So that is an important part of the digital transition, I think.
Yeah, and that's certainly something that's explored more in the state of practice report, is that the new skills that are needing to be brought into a digital team, but actually how much that might save. Another area to move on to, the first questions in relation to this area from Alicia and Juan Carlos and a couple of others. I think the first question I think is pretty easy for both systems, which is, what is the potential for these systems to be used in different countries around the world? And certainly, as far as I understand, both systems could be pretty much used anywhere. But perhaps a slightly deeper question is, Juan Carlos was saying that clearly the systems have been at least initially thought through from perhaps quite a European EIA directive perspective, and there's quite a lot of other thought processes and impact assessment systems around the world in different nations, the international finance institutions. So how can the systems kind of adapt to go beyond that and think about other impact assessment approaches? Nikola, if we come to yourself first.
Thank you. Yes, that's important one. And actually, we worked on it for over years. We started from more like looking into AI directive from European Commission and the practice in Europe, but then we moved also to the other like IFC and the banks, and also looking into American NEPAs and the other procedures. And what is important there is actually I showed you the workspace, and probably you saw the elements there presenting the workflow. So they could be rearranged with to reflect more on specific national legislation or procedures. This is one level. The other level is also we offer report templates that are a little bit more towards the, let's say, some national requirements or international banks or whatever. Then users select those. They could change them directly, so the report looks like in that manner, starting from that particular point. Also, questionnaires that they could be imported. Different questionnaires could be imported from different countries. for instance, for scoping, screening phase, and so on. I didn't have time to show those also. So a lot of templates we offer, and they could be tailored by users, or we could do a little bit of adaptation and customization and provide them as a template for starting off. So this is also available. Methods also, I saw different methods and for significance evaluation and so on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Paul, over or Tom, over to your side in terms of that wider applicability. The I suppose links to IFIs, other applications.
Yeah, if you look at the legislation for impact assessment in other countries, then as far as I know, in all countries you come up with a report in the end, and that report, if you produce that in Word and you use Excel and other applications for visualizations, you can create this in all countries. That means that we already, I think we have 25 projects around that in South Africa. I know that it's used in the Philippines, in India, in Australia, so there in Canada. So there, because we work from a Word document, it is not related to specific legislation. We start with the document at the end that you have to publish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and indeed, just to add to that, what we see currently is that we have around 250 projects using the tool now, of which maybe half of it is actually an environmental impact assessment, because our key focus is digital reporting and offering as many types of things that you can add to the system. And it is very well suitable for EIA studies. But we have recently, or not recently, we actually do it now for the third year, we put our own annual report as a company in the same tool, because it has all the key features of tables, graphs, synchronization options, but also possibilities to connect it to the Dutch government when it comes to tax legislation. Like there's a connection, like these are the official numbers because they're in a report, and it is connected to our KVK, it's called in Dutch, tax authorities. So it is, our scope is wide, and EIA is actually just a very well possibility of the platform.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean they've obviously both got that communication and kind of engagement element to them. There's a specific question on Envigo in relation to, I suppose, the more kind of managing the impact assessment process within the tool. And Jean-Philippe asks whether you can identify differences between impact and effect. So impact being the change caused by the development, and the effect being the actual consequence to the environment. Is that an element of the process within the tool? I know we were skipping through that area quite quickly when you were looking at the matrices.
Yes, that's a nice question, actually. And so what I presented is that we actually start from activities, objects, and so that are related to the project. And then we have a path that goes then through the so-called aspects, but they could be also kind of effects into the implications that altogether affect receptors, and then go all together in constructing impact. I mean, the path can be changed as explained through this modularity. So if someone else wants to have it and separation of the effects, like we do have a separation of impact that is kind of a routine, and to accidental incidents, and also to cumulative, one could also have some vision that and then some requests to change this kind of a pathway. We also have a, I didn't have time to explain and to show. We also have this kind of diagram tool, where you could pieces connected like sources, and then combine into more complex network for one receptor, or going from one to another receptor, like a constructing a network. And what is there important is, like at the end, you have a impact or effect or whatever you want to call them, with this we call it signature. It has main properties there, and which really distinct them from the others, and which is very important then for comparison, for filtering, for matching some other recommendations that come from mitigation measures, for monitoring, and also gives a ground for artificial intelligence to look up something that has a kind of a metadata signature that is one impact, and so it grows like a tree from roots up to then to tree, having everything in one, and then the collection of it. Then you could present this one as a complex one, or you have a more there to show and to elaborate and make statements like a wood.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna, because we're already 5 minutes over, and we still got a very good number of people on. So what I'm gonna do is this is the last area of I suppose questioning. I'll go to Paul first, because I know he's got a certain that kind of certain experience on this in relation to so we're inevitably onto cost. Is it cost effective and that kind of thing, and access and software licenses, and lots of people asking how to get in touch with you guys, and links are being provided for that kind of thing. So this will be the last question area, but I guess it's a two-parter. One is, do you have any evidence of how cost effective it is versus the standard approach of impact assessment writing, of kind of the big reports and those kind of things? And then the second aspect is more specific to either the iReport or to Envigo, in terms of how much does it kind of cost or licensing for this type of approach. So Paul, if we come to you first, and Tom, if you want to add anything, and then we'll come across to you, Nikola, for the last word before we go back to HQ to wrap up.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, for the question. I think it's cost effective. That's the reason that we continue to use it. If I only look at what normally public participation event on preparation costs to show people with roll banners and posters, etc., to produce that. What we do now is we come with one screen, and with all the people in front of it, they have questions. We scroll to the right GIS map. They can zoom into their own living area, and we can discuss. So it saves a lot of money on that part. And on the other hand, the costs are fairly low, to be honest, and to use this. But to say it costs this or that, that means, do you want to host it for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years? Do you want to have 1 publication, 10 publications? Do you want? So there is so much what makes the total amount of cost, what influence that but yeah, for those people who are visiting the IAI in Vancouver, I can have a discussion with them and even show a little bit of, depending on what they want, to show how the cost, what exactly the cost can be.
Okay, thank you.
To shortly add to it, another thing that is possible is you can quickly copy and paste entire iReports. So if you feel like, hey, this study, we're going to do it 10 times, you can copy paste your report 10 times, and there's a smart system of linking text to placeholders. So if you then just refresh the database with a placeholder changed Excel sheet, you could technically create a report in literally 10 minutes, an entire new study, as long as you have your preparation in Excel ready and you copy an existing iReport. So we try to focus on that automation and reduce time as much as possible, so that the output is as great as possible.
Thank you.
Yes, I will continue on this Tom remark again, because this is actually the point that we are looking into also. I explained this tree just previously as an impact, and so you have a collection for one project and for some environments, and when you collect the knowledge in through it, you could quickly then more quickly identify and then produce the visualization and report once you built up this within the platform for one company, let's say, but also for one authority on the other hand, and so on. So we are looking in different stakeholders and trying to find benefits for all. And if we are talking about consultants, definitely the productivity is the one that it's so cost reduction maybe goes, first there is some investment in the learning and everything, licensing, but then the productivity boosts and then it goes up. So this is something that is and also it depends on a scale of a company, and we do have, so this is why we scale down the licenses also for small consultancies for a couple people. And then for the larger corporations, let's say, and enterprises, we do have different scaling, mostly on number of the people, but also a little bit on the suits that we provide, and also two options like per project or per time, as Paul mentioned. So this is scalable to fit all.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Tom, to Nikola, to Paul, for all your time today. We do have some additional questions, so I will ask IA HQ to perhaps provide those on, and hopefully you might have an opportunity to respond to those. Some are a bit kind of wider, so they might not necessarily be able to be answered quite easily, but we could easily have discussed for probably another 10 minutes or so. So thank you very much for your time today. We're certainly going to look to do another one in this digital impact assessment series in early June, and I'm just identifying who might come and speak at that one. It'll be on one of the other topic areas. And thank you very much to Tom, to Paul, and to Nikola. And now back to Bridget just for a quick closeout from HQ.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you, Tom, Paul, and Nikola. That was fantastic presentations and demonstrations, and definitely lots of questions. And Josh, thanks so much for pulling this all together and for working on this upcoming series that we're going to have on other types of digital technologies with the next one in June. So I did want to just, when we're talking about webinars, remind you again that we have 3 coming up soon. 1 is for members only, and 2 are for everybody. And so go ahead and get yourself registered for those. And with that, I just want to wrap up and say thank you all participants for joining us today. Thanks again to our moderator, Josh, and our panelists. In a day or 2, you will be receiving a link to the recording, and on that same website, we'll also have the links to the slides and to the report and to the handouts that were here as well. You will be receiving a brief survey when you leave. We encourage you to please fill that out. In addition to our usual questions, we're also asking you if there's some areas of digital impact assessment technology that you would like to learn more about. That will help Josh, inform Josh as he's looking for presenters for future webinars in this Digital IA series. And of course, if you have other ideas for webinars totally unrelated to Digital IA, that's fine too. There's an opportunity for you to share that with you. We always want to make sure that we're trying to provide training and education that you, our members and our participants, are interested in. So please feel free to share what you learned here today on Twitter or other social media. We know that your time is valuable. We hope you found this valuable as well. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.